So just give me a moment. All right, great.
We are currently recording.
All right, thank you. So hi, everybody, welcome. I am Cheryl Hickey, and welcome to all our commissioners. We have 5 commissioners on this smaller group. So we have Chairperson Tina Sloan, yay. We have Kristen Barnes, we have Kevin Kung, Terry Jackson, and Cynthia Martin. Is everybody here, does it look like?
Doesn't look like Cynthia's here yet. I know she had to step in and out, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, I put the wrong view. Okay.
At some point.
Great. So just a couple of things that they wanted me to mention before we really get started. We have also staff members here. So we have Aaron Scooble. Aaron's going to be our timekeeper, making sure we're not going over our time, and we kind of address both question 5 and question 6. And then we have Kara Mendoza from PSD, and Kara is recording and also keeping track of your comments. So you see we have a document that we're going to try to capture some of your comments today so that we have a full list of the things that you talked about today. And then we also have Sasha Horowitz, and it's wonderful to have Sasha. He is with governmental relations. So we have a good spectrum of staff here today. And welcome to all of the public members. I don't know how many we have at the moment. It looks like we have a few.
Like 5.
So, great. Welcome, everybody. As Amy said earlier, you'll be muted, but you have a chance at the end of the day to provide your comments. So we're thrilled you're here and are able to listen, and we're looking forward to talking with you more about this. And just a reminder that this is just the beginning of this process. So we will, have a lot of time over the next year to talk more about this. And then if there is any technical issues, make sure you email James Webb. It's jwebb with 2 B's at ctc.ca.gov. And if you are leaving this group or need to turn off Zoom, please don't turn it off unless you're not coming back. If you do need to leave, of course you have to leave, but it's just harder to get back in. With that being said, our charge today is to talk about questions and the data related to 5 and 6. What should the commission be doing that it's not currently doing? And what should we stop doing? So 5 and 6. Now, we are asked to give you a few minutes to look over the information, and on the insert, page 13 is where that question begins. Do you all feel like you need a few minutes? Okay.
Yes.
So Tina, how much time do you think we should provide? We only have till 11:45 and we have 2 questions. So do you guys want 5 to 10 minutes? 5 minutes? 10 minutes?
Why don't we try see where we are after 5? Check.
Okay. Aaron, please notify us when we're at 5 minutes.
And Cheryl, I'm just checking in. Is everything okay with logistics?
Kara, I believe so, right?
I hope so.
Okay.
We are recording.
And James, while you're
Yes.
here, we're going to take an hour for this. So we're running a few minutes behind, but we are going to take the full hour. And I think we started at 11:55.
Yes,
So
I
we
did.
will go-
Yeah, and I did set the timer for an hour. So you
Okay.
do have, yes.
Fantastic.
And then
At the
Kara,
top
just to
of your-
let you know, your recording is paused. So you may need to resume your recording.
So yes, we are recording this for the public, just so everybody knows.
And I'll point out that at the top of your screen, you should see remaining time. So there's a time ticker at the top. That is the remaining time for the entire breakout session. So
Stop sharing.
Okay, great.
you can keep an eye on it there as well.
Are you sure, James?
It looks like it's recording.
It does
don't
look
see
like
a
it's
pause.
recording.
Now it is.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a backup recording just in case.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Sasha.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, great. So we're going to take 5 minutes and check with people back in 5 minutes as you look at the data and the
And
information on
The
beginning of
summary for question 5 is on page 15, starting on page 15 of the insert.
page 13.
The charts are on 13 and the summary is on 15.
Wonderful. And then remember, there's a link to the raw data as well if you need to look at it.
And one more remember, which I find helpful, is on the screen that Cheryl is sharing that has the 2 questions. As you're looking at the data, think about the themes that are emerging
Right.
from the stakeholders, and then highlight some that are sort of sticking in your mind as you're looking through them.
Yes, thank you. That's a good way to look at this.
All right, so we're just coming to the end of our 5 minutes.
You guys want a couple more minutes? Or you want to give thumbs up a couple more minutes? Let's say 2 more minutes.
We're at the end of our 2 minutes.
Say that again, Erin. One more minute.
We're at the end of our 2 minutes, unless we want to do more time.
You're going out a little bit. I can't tell what you said. Are we good?
I stopped my video. Can you hear me better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We're at the end of our 2 minutes.
All right. So we know that you didn't have a chance to read this in depth, but as Mary and Amy said earlier, you know, this is our first kind of dive into this. So we'll get started, and you know, as the day goes on, we can continue to look at this, and obviously we have lots of time over the next few months to look at this data and really come up with some ideas. So the big question that was posed is, you know, what are the emerging key themes identified by stakeholders? You know, so commissioners, you should be able to unmute yourself if you're not already unmuted. Let me know, but you know, raise your hands or something. Anyone want to begin? What's striking? Yeah, Kristen, go ahead.
Sorry, I need to turn up my microphone. Obviously the recruitment of, as they brought up earlier, diversity and equity, not only in recruiting, but in evaluating programs or barriers. And increasing diversity also on the commission. So just overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, as Commissioner Greno-Shire was mentioning, you know, it wasn't in those first two charts, but it really comes out clearly here, I think, from what I can read. So this will definitely, seems to be an area of real concern and real, something we ought to be addressing.
I actually want to build on what Kirsten is saying, because I found that number 5, multi-categorical feedback, the diversity, equity, and inclusion points there were 6 of them. That was on page 18. All 6 of those I thought were very, they were very specific and doable and actionable things that I agree with. That we should so reassess what it means to be a quality educator, review all of our credentialing requirements, you know, incorporate standards and expectations for social justice and anti-racist teaching, pedagogy, and teacher preparation. We have some, but we need more. So anyway, I think sort of having a placeholder on those.
Any other thoughts on those?
Yeah, I clearly recognize that, you know, what Tina and Kirsten have said. And it strikes me also that, you know, I think that recruitment is done well in a way, you know. What I'm hearing a lot nowadays is, you know, you go through all these steps, you become an educator, and then you get there, and the environment is not what it needs to be, and then we lose people. So it's almost like, I know we're probably going to concentrate as a commission more on recruiting and making sure we knock down the barriers for people to get into the profession, but it's still equally important that once they're there, and I think that's where the other part, you know, induction and all of that will become so much more important, and mentoring and all of that to keep people in the profession. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I certainly saw those points standing out, and coupled with that are all the barriers, really paying attention to the barriers to even get people into the profession. That's equally being said here about, you know, the CSAT and the RECA, and all of that is coming up as, you know, if you're trying to recruit, also look at these barriers and take them seriously if you want to increase the diversity in the workforce.
I also think it would be interesting, because I did this a little bit with some of my students. I think we need to also hear, I think it'd be interesting down the road to poll high school students. Why are you not wanting to be a teacher? Why are you not wanting to go in education? What
Mhm.
for what reason? And, you know, I've had a few tell me, because I work at a high school, they're like, why? Why would we? You guys are always blamed for everything.
Right,
We hear that there's no money. We hear about
right.
this, and then we see how some of our friends treat people. But I think, you know, why are students in college not, you know,
Right.
why? I mean, I think we need to also get down to why they're not going into it. I mean, we're the adults and we're in the field, but why are students
Mhm.
not choosing to go into education?
Right.
We might find our barriers there.
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
Something you said, Terry, is making me think too about when a lot of us, when we think about we need to revise our standards, and I think we think a lot about those are the TPEs and the CSTPs. It's what we want our teachers to know and be able to do. But also what you were saying about we need to think about what's happening when teachers of color get there, or potential teachers of color get there. So our program standards too, for both, as you were saying, the induction and preparation programs, let's really look at those and ensure that we're asking our spaces to create environments that nurture and embrace diversity, that are equitable for all of the new teachers who are in them, that are, you know, paying attention to anti-racist practice and equity within the preparation and support and mentoring of those people.
Right.
What strikes me on this one too is the nexus with the hope or the desire to put the commission in a leadership position, that this is an area where we can really, you know, forge ourselves as leaders in this area and not,
Yeah.
you know, stay with the current status quo. Let's think bigger, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm glad that you said that, because a lot of the reading and webinars that you know I pay attention to and everything in the job at the department, it does, a lot of those articles and research are pointing to preparation and saying, you know, from the beginning, if that tone is set, that, you know, we're working to diversify the workforce, and that when people are in the profession, how do we make that environment conducive to retaining people and everything. And so it starts with the preparation programs. They're really zeroing in on that, and is the tone set even there where people are already on a path to maybe not stay in the profession? And I like the idea of even going back and talking to, you know, high school students, middle school students, and also people that are in, you know, not in the programs, why they don't even consider becoming an educator. Those key parts are important too, but once you get people in the pipeline, I think that's important too, to make sure that the tone's not set for them to eventually drop out of the profession.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with with what everyone has said. That I think these are important things this commission should start doing. How I read this question, I'm sorry, it's kind of was different. I read it's the question was, how should we start doing, or what should the commission start doing? So I just looked at the charts, and the first thing was communication on pretty much all of them. So then I looked at the goals. I think it was goal number 3 on page 16. And as I was reading through that, so I thought, yes, this all sounds great on how to address what this survey had already said. So sorry, I 100% agree on everything you guys said about DEI. Sorry, I want to go back to that.
Right.
But then it's like, wait, but the data said communication was the big issue for. And I wanted to mention that, in goal 3, everything there, are just like, wait, this answers a lot, hopefully could answer a lot of the concerns, or address a lot of the concerns that the survey had said.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, Kevin, which was sort of vexing me, and maybe others will have insights on this. So earlier on it was, what's the commission doing well? And communication was one of the things that was identified as, most, well. That's not really a word.
Or gooder.
Thank you. And now so I'm not sure what the communication that they want us to start doing is.
That's was something that I also picked up on as well, Tina. And as I'm kind of reading some of the details of what specifically they're asking for related to communication, I think that what we really focus on a lot is face-to-face communications when we have the opportunity to do that, reaching out, having office hours, and I know PSD does a fantastic job of that. Where I think that I'm seeing the need is a lot of the written communication, kind of beefing up our web resources and, some of those kind of more difficult to maintain items. I know, Sasha, if you have any kind of insight on this, since you are kind of our communication guy. Sasha's been doing a lot of work on this. So I think that, this isn't a surprise to us internally, I would say. This is something that we've recognized and that we are putting a lot of effort and stock in, so.
Well, and go ahead, Sasha.
I
know Sasha has double duty right now.
I'm trying to help out Kara and type at the same time, thinking about how this overlaps with my work. I think Erin hit on it. I think a lot of this are things on our to-do list, and we're trying to figure out how we fund and develop them and and implement what people are already suggesting. So we're excited that they're seeing the same issues that we're flagging. So I think that tells us that we're approaching it with the right lens. So I find this really helpful, especially the points about navigating the website or making it more usable for the field.
The other piece to that, I think Corey, our new student representative at the last meeting, brought up a lot of information about, just making things more user-friendly for candidates to understand. We talk very technically a lot of times, and it makes it confusing or hard for somebody who's navigating the system. So, keeping the candidate in mind, I think is important.
I do want to point out that we're about 5 minutes, we have about 5 minutes left in our time for this question, and we haven't gotten to our thoughts on our insights and any questions we have as takeaways.
Priorities,
and we also haven't identified a commissioner to share out at the end of this process. So I don't know if we want to select the same person for both questions or maybe a different person for each question.
Yeah, is there somebody who would like to be the share outer person from our group? To be a commissioner. Any volunteers?
I'm going to pull myself out of the volunteer category.
All right. Do we just draft a person? Oh, there we go. Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Appreciate that. All right, so we have a share outer. And you're right, we need to keep moving with are there themes that we want to highlight? Obviously, I think DEI is definitely an area that we've talked about. But
I also wanted to throw data out there. I think it was
me too. Thank you, Erin.
Strong push to have data in so many different ways, which I thought was really insightful of the field to kind of notice the different ways in which we could not only collect but use data to inform the field.
Right.
Wonderful.
I think that's a big thing I was finding too. We collect a lot of data, and we don't always. We could use it more, I think, in a lot of our work. And we could use it more maybe in the way we do our standard setting, for instance, or the way we might update our accreditation system. And I know we do that to a certain extent, but I think this is an opportunity now that the commission has become so good at collecting data and we've got dashboards, we've got all of this data. Even our processes that we have used to develop standards, for instance, with experts in the field. All the experts get together and they say, here's what we think we need. How about for accreditation, now that there's a way of gathering some data on what are the critical things that programs use, for instance, to make decisions about how candidates are prepared and whether they're ready. Could we collect, some systematic data like that and use that for our revision purposes, for instance? Anyway, these are just things off the top of my head, but.
Absolutely. I think we've spent a lot of time in the last, decade building systems and getting people in the mindset, but now we need to move to the next level, I think, which is, what's the critical data? What's the important data? What's the meaningful data? What helps us kind of make decisions? Absolutely. Any other things to put on here? Yes.
I just wanted to say, as coming from staff perspective, it was nice to not see anything on here that surprised me. So I think that was good. I feel like pretty much everything not everything, but for the most part, the majority of the recurring themes were things that we already have on our radar and that we're already trying to work towards. And it's just a matter of allocating resources and finding time, really. If we had unlimited resources and unlimited staff and time, I think all of these things would already be taken care of, with probably some of the more heavy lift policy issues maybe wouldn't be taken care of. But some of the internal inner working pieces, it was nice to see that there were no big surprises on here for us.
I would love to echo that, Erin, because I looked at the accreditation list and they're all things that we have talked about, have been working on in some way. Absolutely. So I think you're absolutely right. It's very reassuring.
Yeah, it's it means that people are understanding also what we're doing. The other thing, and there was just a little piece here, and it's we'll probably see it in other places too, especially around policy, but integrating digital teaching and learning standards into educator preparation. I think we've seen throughout what's been happening lately, and again, not just what we expect educators to know and be able to do, but what we expect of our programs differently if they're teaching in online and virtual environments, which many of them are. We don't have, really carefully sort of crafted guidance around that kind of online preparation, for instance.
And what a better time to do it than what we've learned over the past, 6 to 7 months. Absolutely.
All right, so we just got a message from our producer that we need to begin shifting to question 6.
All right.
I know we didn't verbally get to our insights, but I think, Kara, maybe as everyone's reading question 6, you might be able to kind of put some of our conversation into some insights for our sharer outer to read.
Absolutely. And Mary, in briefing us again this morning, mentioned, this is not a product-driven day. This is a process-driven. So thinking, having time to reflect. Don't feel like you have to. If you really wanted to talk about something, we can certainly do that. So
I think Sasha started with some things to highlight that I'll just move over there.
Wonderful. Great. Okay, so
welcome, Cindy. Welcome.
The next question then, of course, is what would you like to see us stop doing? So this is question 6, and it begins on page 19 with the data, and the specifics are a little later, beginning on page 20.
And just so I'm clear on what our time is, I got mixed up. Are we until 12:45 or are we until 1?
I think we're until 1. Mary, it sounded to me like Mary said we are giving this an hour. Is that what
we have 28 more minutes in this breakout room, and it'll automatically move us back to the main room after 28 minutes.
You all see that timer in the top right corner.
The timer on the top. Yeah, by the way, it's right there. Okay. It says remaining. Okay. So do you guys need a few minutes to look at this data?
Yes.
Okay.
Cheryl, I hate to, as the latecomer, I'm embarrassed to ask this question, but where's the best place for me to find this document? Are we just doing share screen, or was it emailed to us too?
No problem. So if you look on the commission's meeting agenda, It's the insert that they just put up last night. So it says agenda insert. So it's on the commission website where you would go for the regular meeting information.
Okay, that's such a basic question.
That's
Yeah.
not a problem.
Hi, Cindy, welcome.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you,
Cindy.
thank you.
And just so you know, Commissioner Martin, we are looking at question 6 now, which is what should the commission stop doing? And if you look on the insert, it starts on page 19 with the graphs.
Okay, sounds good. I'll look for it right now.
Okay, we're going to spend, what, should we check you back in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Check back with everybody in 5 minutes. Commissioner Martin, did you find what you needed? Okay.
Yes, I just found it, thank you. And I realized that I missed roll call and I'm sad.
That's okay, we'll get you recorded.
Okay.
All right, so we've had about 5 minutes to review. Do we want more time?
Everybody ready to have a conversation, or would you like a couple more minutes?
I'm good. The feedback was a little shorter on this one, I think. Yeah.
Okay, I agree with you. Okay, so let's start. Any thoughts? So there are 2 questions basically. You know, what are the things that are emerging in terms of things that the commission should stop doing, at least from the perspective of some stakeholders, and then you know, what are some things that you would like to highlight? What do we want to highlight?
I'll start from what I read. From what I read in this, one of the things that came out, which didn't surprise me, when it said, what should a commission stop doing? One thing that came up was credentialing, specifically about testing and fees. Though, I mean, we're kind of required to have some of these tests, so there's not too much we can do about that. So in terms of fees, I mean, this is just in my head, just putting out there is maybe there could be some review of fees, at least maybe for first-time candidates applying. So it's just an idea that I just had when I was reading that.
Any other thoughts so far? Some of these obviously aren't a surprise, I think, especially the testing arena. We've heard a lot about that in the past year or two, particularly as it, you know, intersects with barriers and, you know, the pipeline. Any other thoughts in this area? Anything really stand out?
Well, there were a couple of comments that, I mean, this was an interesting one because this is one that, you know, I'd sort of like to look back at the raw data, you know, is it just one person who said this particular thing, or was it a lot of people? Right. Such as allowing non-IHEs to prepare educators. That's a pretty big statement. Is that just
right?
One.
I think that is just one, Tina.
Okay.
I think for a lot of these, you know, we found what you see, where you see frequency are in categories mentioned, but the comments typically were examples taken out that captured the aspect of recruitment or accreditation that a particular respondent was speaking to.
So then I'm also seeing a lot around the data that we collect around our accreditation data system.
Right.
And I think this just speaks to, well, I think both of these things speak to what Kevin mentioned with the tests and what we're doing with our data system. They're kind of things that we know about, and we're trying to address in a variety of ways. For our tests, for instance, we're trying a number of things, such as having more than one alternative to a test, having coursework alternatives, for instance. But this is something that we always need to keep, you know, our eye on, and really, you know, see if there's other, you know, thinking outside the box about how to change some of these things. But the data system, that's another really interesting one. So we're certainly getting, this is good feedback from people who are using the system, and what is confusing to them or seems duplicative with Title II, for instance. And
exactly. Yeah, I think the data system is a really important one. You know, we have spent the last couple of years building the system, and perhaps, you know, now is a good time to sort of, are we asking the right questions? Are we looking at the right data? Is the data that we're asking for too onerous? You know, and how do we account, the one that's most difficult for us is how do we account for the different academic years, different modalities of offering programs and things like that. So there's some really rich work I think that we need to do in and around the data system and the ADS and the dashboards and that kind of thing. So that will, I have no doubt that that's on our work plan for the next few years, but it's great to, it's actually good to see this on there because I agree wholeheartedly with this.
A couple of things that stood out to me as well were, again, back to like technology, the requiring wet signatures, reject letters through the mail, which, we all know you need those signed receipts as we've seen in some of our closed sessions. But then I had something that popped out at me on the early childhood education one where they said that I found it interesting allowing K through 12 educators to make decisions for the field and then over-regulating the statement that CTC is over-regulating California out of teachers. I'm assuming this is specific to early childhood education. I was just curious if what they're regarding.
Yeah, I wondered about that as well. I wondered about that as well. I don't know if anybody saw that in the raw data. I have not had a chance to really delve into the raw data too much. Whoops.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. I think that was actually pretty close to what was said in the raw data. So there wasn't really much else in there as far as my recollection. I know Mary had a deep dive in the raw data too. I don't know if she's still on here, but there wasn't much else to go off with that one. And so it's funny, some of these things that come up requiring wet signatures, as Commissioner Barnes mentioned, obviously the impact of the pandemic has really pushed this issue of needing wet signatures. And we do actually allow for electronic signatures on our application documentation. So I think part of that goes back to communication and folks just not being aware of that. But also that for legal purposes with, misconduct cases, we actually do require that if somebody has to disclose misconduct and there has to be an investigation, that they have a wet signature on their application. So there's just some legal issues and regulatory issues sometimes that we can't get around. And so while we know that, for the field, it would be ideal to not require a wet signature, in some cases we do have to have it. So those are some of the things that we struggle with often, as related to, aligning ourselves with the regulatory and statutory requirements. And I think it's just, again, comes back a little bit to communication and messaging so that the field has an understanding of why some of these requirements are in place, that they're not arbitrary and we're not trying to make their life more difficult just for the heck of it.
Any other thoughts? Anything in particular we should highlight?
Well, one comment, but it was part of another comment, but it made me, it's just making me think, and I don't know exactly where my thoughts are going to go yet, but it was under research, being compliance driven. And I think with all of these, with many of these comments in here, some of them are in the purview of the commission's ability to do, and others are not. We just talked about legal issues, and there are other things in here that is probably not possible. But then there's also, I think this one is all right. I think there's something to be thought about with the compliance piece. Now, we accredit programs, and there are certain elements of compliance that are required for, I don't know, a number of things. We got to make sure people are meeting, standards. For licensure, all of these sorts of things. Is that compliance? I'm not. Right. But then I also, when I think of compliance as previously as a program leader, there was one thing to just look at standards and data and just to comply, tick it off the list and move on. And there's a whole nother element of look at what these standards are helping us think about and do, and let's inquire into this. Let's move in this direction. So in some ways, is there a way that the way we set and use our policies that we can encourage that kind of focus in programs work versus a compliance focus?
Absolutely.
I'm thinking about.
Yeah, that was one I put a question mark by. I'd love to be able to have that person and sit in a room to hear more about what those thoughts are. But I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we've always kind of, being an agency that deals with educational entities, we're kind of caught between the worlds of, the compliance that we need and the, desire to work with the field to, for improvement and, to work in partnership. So yeah, I'd love to tease that part out more.
I'd like to interject here. Tina,
Yes,
are you
please,
able to repeat, because I wanted to capture that. Is there a way I don't think you said set and apply policies, but can you please repeat what you said? It was a great reflective question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is in the way that we I think it is in the way that we develop policy and in the way that we develop processes or engage in processes for ensuring our programs that we accredit are meeting policy guidelines. Can those whatever the processes and products are, the policy processes and products, can they encourage inquiry and improvement over compliance?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kara, for asking for that restated so we can capture that.
It's still a little fuzzy, but for my typing, but we're getting there. Sorry. It's not an easy document to, yeah.
It's not you, Kara, it's me. So.
We're good.
Any other thoughts from any of the commissioners we haven't heard from yet?
Oh, I just want to also add something. I was reading some of these things to stop, which I was reading in a multi-categorical feedback area where it says for the ECE, someone mentioned about allowing, stop allowing K-12 educators to make decision of ECE field. And I was thinking about back at the other section in our other question 5 or whatever number it was, on what we should start doing. And the third biggest thing was stakeholder engagement. So that going back to that, having more ECE field people in when they're doing stuff about, ECE. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, you have teachers working on teacher stuff. I don't know about as much about about data systems and that kind of stuff, because as a teacher I just don't know about filling out those kind of forms, but I know about teachers, and I know ECE teachers would know more about ECE than than anybody else. And so that's what I meant by it goes back to that stakeholder question,
right,
or the previous one.
And I think fortunately in that respect, we have the master plan coming out soon. So that will also help us figure out some of the ECE policy work that we need to do.
Yeah.
I think, can I comment quickly, Cheryl? This is
yes,
Mary.
please, Karen.
I think that's a really nice connection you're making there, Kevin, I think, because, we don't have one type of everything at our commission table. Mm-hmm. We don't. So, which is why we rely so heavily on expert panels to help us get to the practitioners and the researchers who do know deeply about an area or a discipline and bring that knowledge base, that research base, and those recommendations to this body. So I noticed throughout this feedback, there are one or two entities that are commenting kind of persistently that they'd like to have an early childhood educator seat at the commission table, which is outside our purview, of course. That's the legislature's purview and the governor's purview. But I think that, the stakeholder engagement piece is a very nice connection that you made. I just wanted to observe that.
Yeah. All right. Just a time check. We have about 7 minutes left. So let's make sure we get all of our comments that we want in.
I had a couple of questions. Just they may have been a one-person statement, but the one on page 21 about partnering with Pearson, they're concerned that that they have historic and documented negative relationships with people of color, especially Blacks, going lower. Is this factual based or is this opinion based or?
I think there's definitely a community or individuals who believe that Pearson as an entity, I shouldn't say Pearson, as the testing companies in general. I think that as we start thinking about RECA, CBEST, CSET, and rethinking how we're assessing, we'll be certainly addressing these kinds of issues moving forward about how it is that we can assess, subject matter in different ways, So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities in this next year or two to really think about assessment. Certainly it has been an area that Mary's been, wanting to provide some leadership in. So this is helpful.
Okay. And
But
then
the answer to your question is it depends on who you're talking to.
On page 23, the statement of stop collecting data about teacher candidate sexual identity and orientation.
Yeah.
This is highly problematic for small enrollment programs. I'm not sure what they mean or why it's problematic.
Where's Sasha? Does she?
I'm right here.
Answer that.
So I know exactly what they're talking about. And basically, there was a bill a few years ago that said anytime you're collecting data, you have to specifically now collect sexual orientation and sexual identity data. And the way it gets interpreted for the commission is that we have to, when we collect data, we're collecting it from programs or induction programs or prep programs. And so then they are now required to collect that data from their individuals. So it doesn't really apply to us the way the authors meant to, and we're working on a fix right now.
I guess I was just kind of concerned by their statement. This is highly problematic for small enrollment programs. And in my mind, I go to why is it problematic to collect data? Are they being discriminatory? I mean, I don't know.
The way we've heard it, and this is anecdotal, is that in some cases it puts the programs in an awkward position because it looks like they're interested in that data from the students when they actually have no interest in collecting it themselves. So I think it might create some tension in between the program and the candidates.
And this could be campus specific.
I think it's also about identified identity and this is all self-report data. And in a small institution, if you've got 10 candidates enrolled, you know who's who. And it may be uncomfortable in a small program for students to identify, and they may not want to be identified by that particular identity feature, right? So I think that's where it gets a little touchy.
I think that goes the same is true for employing agents, that sometimes a newest teacher doesn't want to identify in his or her early years. You'll see tomorrow on some of the grants reports about the number of folks who are choosing not to self-identify anything. So yeah, that's right.
I have one question that just as a placeholder, because this was so concerning, it was on page 22 under accreditation number 6. And I don't know about the accuracy of this statement, but basing the accreditation review on the number of candidates who completed coursework rather than get their credential, and saying that our program, 11% of our candidates who finished the coursework, or only 11% who finished coursework ever received a credential. If that's true, that is a practice that we need to address.
Yeah, I think that's a really important comment. I don't know the factual nature of this or where they got this number from. One of the things that we've been trying to do in our accreditation reports is to talk about program completers so that we have a sense of how many people started, how many completed. Same with the ADS system. And it's one of the areas where we'll be talking about with program leaders about. It's really challenging when you don't have a traditional year to figure out who starts and who ends and what the completion rate is. Because we have so many institutions that, you know, operate on a module basis or operate on a monthly basis rather than a traditional academic year. And so figuring out how to get that data in a way that's understandable and consistent has been a challenge. And we're hoping to continue to work on that because that's exactly the kind of information I think that plays into the accreditation system. You know, candidates that start should be able to finish with, you know, the rare exception of an individual who's counseled out for a reason. So we need to get a handle on completion.
Yeah, so not just in our data system, but we need to know if this is really happening in institutions where people are paying to be prepared to teach and they're never able to teach.
Exactly. Exactly.
I just want to jump in here real quick and let everyone know we have less than 2 minutes, about 1.5 minutes left in here.
All right.
And I want to make sure we have our individuals identified to share to the big group because I think we go first. We're group 1.
Okay, so Commissioner Jackson said she would do it. Do you want to do both of them?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, wonderful. So any other last thoughts in our last minute before they force us to go back in the bigger group? All right.
I wish we could ensure that student teaching internships and classroom hours were paid.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wish we could ensure that people could be prepared to teach without having to pay for it. In fact, I wish we could give them stipends to prepare to teach.
And I wish we could give our mentor master teachers more.
Yes.
So that, you know, we could be selective and we could reward them and they could be acknowledged.
Yeah. I think that's the big overarching theme of everything is the resources to be able to operate a system the way that we want. And I like that. Then you can move to being selective and really getting the best in the profession. So
yeah,
that's always going to be that overarching because
I know. And I didn't mean to be facetious either. I meant
I got both. It's both, and then deep down that's really where it's at.
If you don't dream it, it will never.
That's
surface.
right. That's right.
Correct.
Other fields you have paid interns. You get paid to learn to do
That's
the
right.
job.
That's right. And other countries too in teaching.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe we should think bold.
Well, I think, you know, we've also been hearing a lot about they want us to take leadership in advocating for the field. I mean, so we can say
Like apprenticeships, for
right.
example, teacher residencies.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being timely. You know, when the room closes, you don't have a lot of choice. This is true. This is true. But you didn't have to tell them that, Terry. Now they know the secret. All right, so we are going to do a summary here of our first round of discussions on questions 5 and 6. We have a process, of course, to help organize our thinking and sharing. We are now back in the main room, so welcome back. And each group will have 5 minutes. So these are very high-level highlights. Of course, all of you have seen that we've been gathering all of your thinking in our OneDrive document.